Guys, why is the NFL so cucked and why is the UFC so based?
That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want and they can believe whatever they want.
Many of men in the audience at the game between the Bills and the Chiefs, they were obviously hoping and praying that another famous Buffalo Bill would be in the press box with Taylor Swift and Brittany Mahomes, but obviously we did not get that. I'm just kidding. Don't come over here and beat me up in the comment section over that. But obviously, we have spent the entire year, the entire NFL season, hearing about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. And you got to wonder if people are starting to get irritated with this. And all I have to say to you is that we are hoping and that we are praying that next week Lamar Jackson puts an end to this entire ordeal. And we can send Mr. Kelce on his retirement because that's probably what's going to happen. And he can go work for Pfizer full time. But still at the same time, that doesn't exactly answer the question why it is that the NFL is so cucked. So before we talk about the NFL being cucked and the UFC being based, let's go back in time. Recently, there was an incident that occurred. Let me play part of this for you.
First and foremost, I just want to give all glory and praise my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's been amazing.
And this is the way they edited the clip.
What does this moment mean?
I mean, it's been amazing being in this city for as short as I've been. But
this is a disgraceful act by NBC, and they need to do better.
Houston Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud, very, very young, very talented, a team that, quite frankly, has struggled for a very long time, struggled to find a good head coach. It looks like they finally found one, D'Amico Ryans. Good for these guys. By the way, D'Amico's a good guy. I'm glad to see that D'Amico has actually got a job and he's successful, actually a job as an NFL head coach, not just a coordinator. He definitely deserves it. But C.J. Stroud, he's in the process of giving glory to God, which, to tell you the truth, is kind of a staple for a lot of NFL players, regardless of how they may vote or whatnot. Most NFL players are, quite frankly, spiritual. As a matter of fact, most black people as a whole are actually spiritual. If you lived in the South, you would probably know this. It's not just black people. Of course, the South as a whole is way more religious, but of course, black people as a whole, they typically tend to be a lot more religious. They typically tend to thank God a lot more often. It's not a stereotype. It's just the truth. I just simply ask you guys to go inside the churches, go to black areas, and you'll see it for yourself. But the NFL has always had this thing where it is that players will kneel after scoring a touchdown, say a prayer, thank God, which of course they should. They feel like they should. They obviously should do it. The same exact way I get up in the morning and thank God that I'm still alive. It's just a Christian thing to do. Some of us aren't the best Christians in the world, but quite frankly, we do that. Obviously, we want to thank God as much as we can because it's called giving reverence. But NBC decides to cut and edit that. Now, I really like how it was that C.J. Stroud responded to this, showing up to a press conference a week later like this, which you're seeing now. Did you think that maybe at some point in time the NFL players will get tired of the censorship, they'll get tired of the rules, they'll get tired of all this nonsense? I mean, I showed you guys a little bit earlier of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce throwing up the heart sign. And of course, I told you earlier that some people were wishing that O.J. Simpson was in the audience. Maybe that might put an end to this. Now, I'm not making this video to be anti-Taylor Swift or anti-Travis Kelce. I'm just simply making a point. By the way, I got no problem with either one of them. I'm just simply saying that people are getting tired of this on-screen love romance and they want it to end. And like I said before, we're all hoping and praying that Lamar Jackson puts an end to it on Sunday. As a matter of fact, the Kansas City Chiefs this entire year, they've been unlikable, like an unlikable bunch, whether it be Patrick Mahomes almost crying at the end of a game. The guy behind the line did a video on this, whether it just be the general attitude of that team and also the referees helping out. But there is one thing that we can always count on, regardless of how you feel about the UFC or how you feel about Dana White, the hypocrisies when it comes to fighters, and of course, the whole notion of bringing Bud Light in, basically signing a contract with them, then obviously your gripes would in fact be legitimate. However, there is one thing that Dana White has always been, and it's always been pretty consistent in allowing his fighters to voice their opinion.
But like, you obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, what they can say when they are up there with a UFC microphone and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there...
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying you...
A leash?
Like...
Free speech. Control what people say. Going to tell people what to believe. Going to tell people... I don't fucking tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on, though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want and they can believe whatever they want.
That was roughly only 40 seconds there, but Dana has done this on multiple occasions. And even though the UFC does have a relatively conservative brand, there was a photo that was released also this weekend of Raquel Pennington after she won the belt. I want to say that somebody correct me in the comment section, but I want to say it was the women's bantamweight title. Her wife, because she is gay, brought their adopted daughter to her after the fight. Was posted on Twitter, and some people got upset about this, but at the same time, and even though I don't approve of that, I got to go ahead and say it right now, I don't see any hypocrisy when it comes to terms of free speech. Even though I don't agree with Raquel Pennington's lifestyle, obviously somebody took a photo and put it up. And of course, some people think that it may have been in reference to some of the things that Sean Strickland has said. I mean, Sean Strickland has gotten himself in trouble with the liberal media recently. Here's a good example.
Sean, Neil Davidson from the Canadian Press. Welcome to Canada.
Oh, congratulations! Yeah, fucking the Canadian Press, man. Were you a COVID bank account stealer too? Were you on board with that?
No,
Are you left wing or right wing? Were you a Trudeau? We got one of the fucking commies with the press. We got to know where this man stands. Were you non-biased?
I think I'll ask the questions here.
Oh, he thinks he'll ask. Oh, we fucking know. Maybe I should just pass on this motherfucker. He's gonna go back. He's gonna go back and fucking give my bank account information to fucking Trudeau.
Well, it's probably a good bank account.
What Sean Strickland is doing is he is simply calling out the hypocrisy. He's calling out the BS these people. Now, that little clip that I showed you guys just now, okay, the real reason why it was that Sean Strickland figured that he would point this out is because obviously he was in Canada. He is obviously a guy who does, in fact, care about free speech. I'm not going to play this clip from Rebel News, but you guys can obviously see it in the B-roll footage. He was calling out the hypocrisy of Canada's Orwellian society, or the society that, quite frankly, is becoming in the nation of Canada. I mean, you had people screaming F Trudeau in the crowd the other night. But back on topic. You've got a clinical psychologist, Jordan Peterson, who, by the way, can be cringed from time to time, who just had his psychiatry license revoked simply because he disagreed with the state. Also, the trucker protest, that, of course, was what Sean Strickland was talking about. He was talking about the fact that bank accounts were seized because Justin Trudeau was upset, because Justin Trudeau is such a delicate snowflake that he, quite frankly, can't take it when somebody protests against him. Every single president in the United States, at least every president since, I'd say, the Bush days, maybe even long before that, has dealt with some form of protesters. Nixon and Johnson both, they had to deal with Vietnam War protesters. Who else? Oh, Jimmy Carter, he had to deal with people picketing constantly in unions because of the inflation, because jobs were being lost. Reagan had to deal with it early in his administration. And then George Herbert Walker Bush, he got backlash over signing the Insurrection Act during the 1992 LA riots. Clinton, I'm pretty sure he had some people who did not like him. Bush had people protesting him over Iraq and Afghanistan. You had Occupy Wall Street, which, by the way, occurred when Obama was in office. You also had all those riots that occurred. By the way, I don't condone riots at all. And then, of course, we all know about the Trump administration. Every day somebody was protesting because the liberal media had people ginned up over anything and everything. And then all of a sudden the coup happened. Protest, freedom of speech, even though I sometimes don't like some of these protests, I got to give these people I got to say, hey, look, you got the right to go protest. You got the right to speak out about it. Now, really quick, about said free speech, I want to say this. The thing about free speech is this here, and I'm a guy who's extremely in favor of free speech. And everything that Sean Strickland is saying, of course, he said in that clip, I agree with, and everything that he says in the next clip, I agree with. But the thing about free speech is this here. You see, we oftentimes don't want to siphon off any voices. The reason why is you need to hear the good and you need to hear the bad. You need to be able to have the back and forth to obviously call out the nonsense. Steven Crowder had a situation recently with Piers Morgan. Let me roll this.
Give an answer, and therefore we were in a game of cat and mouse, which went on so long that the viewer was left in no uncertain terms what his answer actually was. Because otherwise, you just say Hamas are a terror group. It's not difficult. And in fact, 2 days later, he admitted Hamas are a terror group. That was his position. But only after I shamed him into...
And Stephen's 100% correct. By the way, I want to go ahead and say this. Piers Morgan, regardless of whether he is on the European right, which I still think is very, very much a lib, Steven Crowder, quite frankly, knocked that out of the park. Piers Morgan is still the prototypical redcoat. I just figure I would say that before we go forward. I want you to know right now that the only people who have a problem with freedom of speech are those who, quite frankly, just simply disagree with the actual truth of the matter. The thing is this right here. With free speech, you have the ability to debunk very, very bad claims. You have the ability to speak up. You have the ability to fight back. You have the ability to speak out. That is the reason why free speech does, in fact, exist. You can say whatever you want, and quite frankly, free speech should never be muzzled under any circumstance. That is, of course, unless you're screaming some extremely negative stuff like, I don't know, fire in a movie theater, something like that. There's something completely uncalled for. But for the most part, free speech is a staple of a free society, and it always needs to remain. So when people complain about a UFC fighter voicing his opinion about something that, quite frankly, is affecting people's lives, I have no choice but to laugh at them. Meanwhile, looking at another player who, quite frankly, is not going to tell the truth about his current situation, that right there being an NFL player, and sending up fake little hearts to obviously what is apparently his girlfriend, which, by the way, everybody's tired of. We're tired of the hype, not her. Take it easy, Swifties. Or maybe the fact that you got an NFL quarterback who wants to praise Jesus, actually wants to thank God, suddenly getting muzzled. But of course, he had a great comeback to this. The fact of the matter is at this moment in time, the UFC looks way more based than the NFL could quite possibly ever be. We need to have free speech so that way we can have the dialogue, so that way we can debunk these very, very bad ideas. If you have nothing but state-run media giving out these bad ideas and giving these bad thoughts to people without any type of pushback at all, you're going to have a society of basically nothing but good old-fashioned idiots. Or the idiots could find themselves pigeonholed into a very, very small spot, which that right there may, of course, have some advantages, but we'll probably discuss that at a later date. So when Sean Strickland goes out for a little over 2 minutes and basically checks the Canadian Reporter, like right here.
Pretty supportive gay and lesbian community in this city. I did want to ask you about something you wrote a couple of years ago. You said, if I had a gay son, I would think I'd...
Oh, look, another, I'm saying the swamp, you guys, the swamp.
You become a champion, you become a star, and some would say...
Let me ask you something. Are you gay?
Have you had the chance to interact with a more diverse...
Are you, let me know, are you gay?
Could I get an answer?
Well, no, I'm asking, this is the part of, are you a gay man?
I'm an ally of the community.
Okay. If you had a son and he was like, you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak fucking man, dude. You're part of the fucking problem. You elected Justin Trudeau, like, when he sees the bank accounts, like, you're just fucking pathetic. And the fact that you have no fucking backbone. And has he shut down your fucking country and seized bank accounts? You ask me some stupid shit like that, go fuck yourself. Move the fuck on, man.
That doesn't really answer the question, but I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud Light sponsorship that you'd go so hard on Bud Light in your next flight, they'll have to accept me or denounce me when they know what, and we'll know what they stand for.
This guy's like, hey, this Canadian's not that Canadian.
Are you still going to use your flight time to kind of speak on that?
Here's the thing about Bud Light. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental fucking illness. And now all of a sudden, people like you have fucking weaseled your way into the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of fucking you. And the best thing is the world's not buying it. The world's not buying your fucking bullshit you're fucking peddling. The world is not saying, you know what? You're right. Fucking chicks have dicks. The world's not saying that. The world's saying, no, there are two genders. I don't want my kids being taught about, who they could fuck in school. I don't want my kids being taught about, their sexual preference. Like, dude, this guy is the fucking enemy. You want to look at the fucking enemy to our world?
You think to yourself that the UFC is quite based by allowing their fighters to have a platform. Holly Holm, for example, she has called out child traffickers. You've had several fighters call these people out. You've had fighters call the BS of the world out. This right here is kind of what they do. By the way, UFC fighters don't make as much money as multi-million-dollar athletes that you see in the NFL and the world of boxing. These people use their platform, I think, for a little bit better. And some of these guys actually have sponsors who probably don't like the idea of them using this platform to speak out. But then again, though, some of them probably do as well. A lot of small businesses sponsor UFC fighters. I mean, I'm not going to go through the entire list, but the thing is this right here. The UFC is, quite frankly, beginning to look more and more and more like America's sport because of all the censorship everywhere else. And that right there might be an insult to somebody who says that Baseball is America's pastime. Yes, it is America's pastime, but it looks like right now that the common, average, ordinary American is starting to identify with what the UFC fighter is saying. And that the UFC fighters themselves appear to be actually genuine, whereas the NFL, on the other hand, appears to be mostly sellouts. But in reality, is it really and truly the NFL? Looks more to me like the NFE, as in National Football Entertainment. It's basically pro wrestling at this point, folks. Rather than seeing NBC completely edit a guy's post-game comments about thanking Jesus, or, I don't know, maybe seeing what clearly looks like a manufactured romance and a guy basically looked pussy whipped on national television. So, as I said before, there were a lot of people watching the Bills-Chiefs game last night hoping that O.J. Simpson was in the press box. Yes, I do have my reservations about Dana. Whether it be the hypocrisy with John Jones or whether it be the hypocrisy around the Francis Ngannou situation. By the way, when Colby Covington was fighting Kamaru Usman, when he was using the whole MAGA shtick, which, by the way, a lot of people think is a grift, I personally don't think it was. I think it was just an attempt at him trying to save his career, because if you know the real truth about that situation, then you know that Colby was about to get fired. The thing is where Colby was actually winning fights, and I'm pretty sure he was already conservative leaning going into said fight. Same thing with Jorge Masvidal, who, by the way, is a Cuban immigrant, or he is the son of Cuban immigrants. So therefore, he has the stories of communism. He has the stories of leftism that he grew up with. So obviously, these guys are going to be a little bit more on the right, or at least they're going to be right-leaning. If you look into Sean Strickland's past, you actually find a lot of things that tell you this guy's obviously been through a lot. Even with all the bluster or whatnot, you got to give the guy some credit for going in the ring, even though I kind of dissed him earlier about his record being mostly decisions and split decisions. And, of course, sometimes his trash talk comes off as a little bit unnecessary, but still at the same time, you got to give the guy credit for calling out the issues and using his platform. As a result of this, those who work for the UFC now look way more based. That right there is the truth of the situation, while those who work in the NFL are starting to look like they are in fact cucked. It's probably one of the main reasons why it is that people automatically cringe once Aaron Rodgers talks about something that happened or something that he saw on the news. That right there is the thing about the NFL. NFL players, for the most part, are in fact muzzled, and they look like guys who are just to be working for the system, therefore making them look like they're sellouts. Now, we haven't seen this in the ratings yet, but still at the same time, as a result of this, a lot more people are going to the UFC. Now, you could sit here and you could say that it's about certain stars, certain people who work over there. I say that it's really just the overall sport and the fact that Dana White allows them the freedom to basically voice their opinions and voice their thoughts on so many of the evils that are going on in the world. By the way, what Sean Strickland was saying, we'll be talking about that in video 2 tomorrow afternoon after this video here, because of Joy Reid's very, very cringeworthy exchange with the leader of Moms for Liberty. But we'll be getting to that there tomorrow. Fact of the matter is this here. The UFC at this moment in time looks like the sport of base chads, where it is that the NFL looks like the sport of cucked pussy whoop fraud. It's not just personalities. It's not just people like Sean Strickland calling things out. It's the UFC platform as a whole that allows its fighters to go out there and say what it is that needs to be said. By the way, I talked a little bit about Covington and Usman. What if I was to tell you that Kamaru Usman was actually not a lib? What if I was to tell you that Kamaru Usman's politics lean more right? What if I was to tell you that Drakus Duplessis, who's from South Africa, the guy that Sean Strickland controversially lost to this weekend, what if I was to tell you that he was actually much, much more on the right, even though it sometimes doesn't look that way? That's just the customs that he's been raised around, if you've seen the photos of his coach kissing him. Also, to go on top of this, Ngannou, most fighters as a whole lean right, except for John Jones, maybe, who has an issue. But I'm not going to get too far on this. The fact of the matter is that UFC fighters, because the UFC brand, the way they are, they allow their fighters to be a little bit more based, and they allow their fighters to actually stick up and talk about the issues of society. Where football, on the other hand, will kick you when you're down. They will kick you when you actually speak out about this. You ever wonder why it was that Tom Brady was so muzzled? I mean, look, we know Tom Brady's a base conservative in real life, but holy crap, though, Tom Brady never really truly spoke about the issues. Of course, Michael Jordan, he basically said it, Republicans buy sneakers too, but still at the same time, back in the 80s and early 90s, they were a little bit freer to voice their opinion. They just chose not to, because obviously the athlete was, in fact, for the most part, a little bit smarter. But the thing is this right here. Social media has created this entire situation where athletes and certain personalities will voice their opinions about certain things, and sometimes it's a bad opinion. Like, for example, LeBron James. Everything that comes out of his mouth typically tends to be a bad opinion. But yet when Kyrie Irving turns around and points out the hypocrisy around the poke and says, I'm not going to take it, he gets scorned for it. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Fact of the matter is that people are starting to gravitate towards that which is telling the truth. So that right there, which is actually throwing up, or how do I say this, speak truth to power. That right there is what the hell is really and truly going on. It isn't even really speaking truth to power. It's just simply people speaking out about things that are going on in their everyday lives or things that they see going on in other people's lives that are actually in some way affecting them as well. And that right there is the reason why it is that the UFC at this moment in time looks way more based, whereas the NFL looks purely cucked and, quite frankly, pussy whooped. With that right there being said, guys, make sure you guys give me your thoughts in the comment section. I would really and truly love to hear what it is that you've got to say on this matter. Please let me know if you agree or you disagree. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.